21 minutes after the hour, America. Hugh Hewitt. So pleased to welcome to the program Bishop Thomas Olmsted of the Diocese of Phoenix. Bishop, welcome. I'm really honored that you would join us today.
Thank you, Hugh. Good to be with you.
Your letter to all the people of the Phoenix Diocese, I read on the air and I posted it. In it, you say we cannot, we will not comply with this unjust law. What does that mean, Bishop Olmsted?
Well, we have to, just because of our own dignity as a human person and our integrity as a believer, we have to, our faith means something. And if it means something, then it's connected with our deepest convictions, connected with our commitments. And our commitment is to serve the Lord our God with all our heart and all our mind and all our soul. And so to act against our conscience, what we think is right or wrong, would be to deny something very central to who we are as a human person.
But when you say we will not comply, does that mean that you would get out of all of the institutions that currently operate, Catholic charities, the schools, any Catholic college or institution under your authority? Or does it mean that you would simply refuse to comply and you would pay whatever fines or not pay whatever fines were levied against you?
I think that those decisions we'll have to make as we get nearer to the time and look at it. Certainly, paying the fines, I can't imagine how that could last very long, because we have a lot of institutions, but they serve those who need to be educated, those who are poor, those who are elderly, Native American populations, etc. So we couldn't possibly sustain the fines for a very long time. So I hope we don't reach that stage where we have to make some very concrete situations. But personally, in terms of our deciding whether or not we will pay for these things as individuals, I think that's something we can each make and need to make. And then as heads of organizations, wherever we're obliged, I would hope that we would stay strong and not comply with this.
Now, Bishop, I'm not asking you a gotcha question, but it's really the central question. Right now, just on this program, Mitt Romney said he would revoke this on the first day as president. Rick Santorum and Newt Gingrich have said the same thing. So you have the three leading Republicans saying they would end this regulation. And you have President Obama, who called Archbishop Dolan and said it's coming. It's a clear divide. Will you have to consider the question? I'm not asking you to answer it, but will you have to consider the question on instructing Catholics of good conscience how they ought to vote in the presidential election if this situation doesn't change?
Well, we Catholic bishops have been trying to do that with every single election to help our people to vote according to the principles that we believe. We usually talk precisely about those things which are always wrong, always evil. Those are ones in which we really cannot compromise on. And then others where it's a question of prudential judgment, whether what's there or not. These issues are really very basic issues. So these will certainly be principles we will be lifting up for our people as they make very serious decisions of voting.
Can you imagine yourself coming to the point where a letter is read in the Diocese of Phoenix that says, a Catholic in good conscience may not vote for President Obama? I'm not asking you to answer that question, but do you think you'll have to consider that level of specificity if this impasse continues?
I would be very surprised that we would ever mention by name. Our usual way of acting is not ad hominem, not directed to particular persons, but is directed to the principles that we need to lift up, which obviously have to do with presentations that politicians are making and others, so people can make their own application from those.
But am I correct, Bishop? Is it your understanding that the president did call Cardinal-designate Dolan and explain his decision to him?
I don't know if that happened or not. I know there was a conversation back, I think it was in November, between Archbishop Dolan, then now Cardinal-elect Dolan, and the president. And that time, I don't think he had the impression that this was the direction that things were going to go.
Were you surprised by this decision?
I was surprised by the decision. I don't understand why we would step away from the First Amendment, which is religious freedom. Religious freedom is the first freedom. We we're created by God in the image of God, so our relationship with Him is the first freedom that we have. He's the one who gives us freedom. And so if we violate that first freedom, it's the first one in our Bill of Rights, it's the first one that's recognized in the United Nations, it just makes sense that it's the first freedom. So it just doesn't make sense that, to me, why the administration would want to take such a drastic act contrary to our human dignity and to our freedom.
Yeah, I agree with that, Bishop Olmsted, which brings me back around to the question of ever coming up against the hard choice to advocate a candidacy by name. But I don't think, unless the bishops say it clearly, that the interest groups on the Democratic Party will hear you. To avoid the impasse, they have to know what this means to Catholics. Do you think they get it, that this just cannot stand?
I think it's very encouraging that we hear statements made by a number of Catholics of all different political persuasions. A number of editorials have come out by people from various political persuasions as well. Seeing this is really a major departure from a recognition of a right that all of us need to have protected.
Have you heard from the Vatican on this yet, to your knowledge, Bishop Olmsted?
Well, this is the year when bishops go to visit with the Pope. About every 5 to 7 years, all the bishops of the world go to visit with the Pope. And there was a group of bishops from the United States who were there in January. And at that time, there was a statement made by Pope Benedict. I could read part of it for you if you'd be interested.
Please.
What Pope Benedict says is, of particular concern are certain attempts being made to limit that most cherished of American freedoms, the freedom of religion. Many of you, he says, have pointed out that concerted efforts have been made to deny the right of conscientious objection on the part of Catholic individuals and institutions with regard to cooperation in intrinsically evil practices. Others have spoken to me of a worrying tendency to reduce religious freedom to mere freedom of worship without guarantees of respect for freedom of conscience. So he addressed it very directly, speaking precisely about religious freedom and lifting up what we have seen, sadly, that's happened with the administration, especially with Hillary Clinton, when they try to reduce freedom of religion to freedom of worship. And that's a very narrow category. That's not at all what we're talking about.
No, it's not. Last question, Bishop. Could you personally, as Thomas Olmsted, Bishop, could you vote for someone who stood behind this policy?
I could not vote for someone who's in favor of any intrinsically evil thing.
And this policy is intrinsically evil?
Well, this policy means that we are forced to subsidize things that are intrinsically evil.
Bishop Olmsted, thank you so much for joining me from the Archdiocese of Phoenix. I appreciate your time so much.